Howdy y'all, my name is Carson Umbarger with SC Traditions. Now whether you're new to fishing or you're wanting to expand your rod and reel arsenal, you found this video because you want to learn how to throw the bane of every fisherman's existence, yet simultaneously their favorite thing in their tackle box, the humble baitcaster. And I say humble in quotations because this thing can be a bear. So I'm going to share with you today 3 easy tips that's going to make it a little bit easier to throw this sucker right here. Tip number 1, I want you to set your brakes just a little bit higher. So all baitcasters have 3 adjustable components. You have your tension knob, which basically means after you click that button, that's gonna let that lure free spool down just a little bit. It's how much tension is on the spool, how fast it's gonna be able to spin. Then we have our star drag, which works just about like any other type of reel. That's how much the fish is going to be able to pull line out as you're trying to reel it in. And then we have our brakes. Now in this one, the brakes are housed internally under this panel. I'm gonna pop it off real quick though. It's right there. So what the brakes are is it's a magnet inside the spool. So after I take a step back to throw, like that, that spool is spinning. There's a magnet inside of there that is working against the metal of the spool to slow that spool down just a little bit. So the higher you have your brakes, the more forgiveness you're gonna have while that lure's flying through the air. So if you don't put your thumb down in time, that brake's gonna stop it, so it either doesn't bird nest at all or doesn't bird nest quite as bad. Now the looser the brake, typically the further you're gonna be able to throw it. But if you're just starting out and you're trying to learn, set that brake up just a couple of notches, and then as you get more confident, turn it down until you find your magic number. Your magic number might be 1, your magic number might be 10. Everybody's a little bit different. Everybody likes a different feel. Tip 2, and this is the quickest one, I want you to use a thicker line. A thicker line, especially on a baitcaster, is just a little bit easier to throw. The number 1 bane of every fisherman's existence is the dreaded bird nest. When this spool spins a little bit more after the lure stopped moving and all the line gets tangled up inside the spool. It's a disaster. But if you have a thicker line, it's gonna allow you to do that just a little bit less. It's gonna give you a tiny bit more forgiveness when it comes to stopping that lure on time. And the other good news is, if you have to cut some line off, thicker line, you usually have more on the spool at home. With that, I will also add in a good starting line to learn on is monofilament or fluorocarbon. Monofilament's cheap, it's abundant, that's a great one to learn on. Fluorocarbon, similar to monofilament, it's not cheap like monofilament, but it is a little bit thicker, a little bit easier to throw, a little easier to tie knots. Braid is probably the last thing that you need to learn to throw on a baitcaster. It is very valuable to throw on a baitcaster, but it can be really finicky when it comes to bird nest, and just like a piece of thread, it will knot up very easily. Last but not least, I've got our 3rd tip of the day, and that is to make short, targeted cast. I know everybody wants to sit back, whale back, and absolutely chunk one out into the lake, out into the pond, whatever you got. But listen, how many of y'all played baseball? You gotta learn to throw the ball before you can throw it 90 miles an hour. It just doesn't come off your hand that fast in the beginning. So what I want you to do is to pick a spot. So watch this, we're gonna do a spot. I wanna throw right at the end of those lily pads. Look at that, short, targeted cast. So one of the greatest things about a baitcaster, it allows you to make quick, repeated cast. So don't underestimate the ability to make short, targeted cast. And it's a great way to learn how to throw it, because if you try and bomb it and then you bird nest it, holy crap, you've just lost half your line on your spool. Or holy crap, you just smacked it into the water and lost all your fish that were in the area. If you make short, targeted cast and you bird nest, all you got to do is cut it off, start again. You're not out a ton of line. You can keep fishing on the day. You don't have to stop and re-spool. If you make a big boo-boo, half the time you can walk out there and get it yourself or drive your boat over. And then 2, you're just making short targeted casts. So you're usually putting less tension on that spool, less tension on that line, reducing the way for bird nest. It also teaches you really well to get your thumb down on time to stop that spool. So all these tips are pretty well just shy of the gospel truth. You can go ask any experienced angler and they're going to tell you that a lot of these tips are what they recommend as well. But I'm going to give you a quick little bonus tip that is kind of a Carson special here. What I recommend, maybe not what every angler recommends, but I recommend throwing a 1/4 ounce spinnerbait or some form of jig to learn on. To me, that's the easiest lure to throw. Sometimes if you're throwing weighted Texas rigs and that sort of stuff, you're throwing something that's a little bit too light, you're throwing something that's a little bit too heavy. Sometimes the weight can add a funky flight path through the air as you're throwing it, causing a bird nest, that sort of thing. So in my opinion, a simple jig or a 1/4 ounce spinnerbait is a really good alternative for your first lure to throw on a bait caster. It's got enough weight to throw, but it's not heavy enough where you're going to risk a bird nest too many times. And hey, you know, I caught an 8-pound bass off of a bait caster with a 1/4 ounce bluegill spinnerbait. Maybe I'm partial. Anyway, I hope you really enjoyed the video. We don't just do how-tos on this YouTube channel. We do lots of other cool things. We're headed out to Tennessee in a couple weeks to go fishing for some brim, maybe even some bowfin. I caught one of those last time we were out there. We're also gonna try and go gig some carp. But before that, we're headed down to the South Carolina coast and we're gonna try and hook up on some ocean fish, and we might try and bass fish on an island. It's pretty cool. You should stay tuned. Thanks for watching.